The Texas Motorplex is an extremely strange racetrack. It can give you a record-setting performance or be a heartbreaker. And so far this weekend, it's been a heartbreaker for 8-time world champion John Force. The traction out there is so great that as the car's not set up perfectly, it can actually cause the tires to shake and lose traction and smoke, and that's precisely what's happened to John Force. His crew chief, Austin Coyle, so far this weekend has had to take all the power out of the engine, all the clutch out of the car, just to try and get the car down the racetrack. Now, they've done that, but they are not qualified. Is it possible that 8-time world champion John Force will not qualify for this race at the Texas Motorplex? He's got one more try. Steve?
Well, Frank, if John Force doesn't qualify, I will eat this little foam sock on the top of this microphone. Also a surprise this morning, this man, Bob Vandergrift Jr., driver of the Jerseys car, was not in the show after 2 tries, but you rectified that with a 468. Was that one of those, let's just get it down the racetrack route?
Yeah, definitely. You know, we struggled yesterday. We never got a handle on the weather, and we hate going into the last qualifying session not qualified. So that was one, let's just get it down the racetrack, and then we'll worry about the last session later.
You ran so well 2 weeks ago in Houston, going to the final 4 solid 450s. That combination isn't working here. Why?
Well, it's hot, and it's real humid, and we got behind on it, and yesterday was actually a little weak, so we're trying to fix that. Now, you know, between Ray Alley and Johnny West, I'm sure we'll have it fixed for the next session.
Have a safe race. Bob Fry?
Steve, as you know, drag racing can be an awfully expensive sport. Case in point, blow up one of your top fuel motors, it'll set you back about 35 grand. Now, that's not too bad if you're Joe Amato or Gary Scelzi, teams that money isn't a real problem. But what do you do if you're Alan Hartley, mild-mannered computer software manufacturer from out in Omaha, Nebraska? You pack up your stuff and head home? Nope. You tell the boys to go in the trailer, get a new bullet, put it back in the frame rails of the race car, because we're going racing. This team's coming off their qualifying effort down in Houston 2 weeks ago, and they're looking to make it 2 times in a row into the top fuel field. And you know what? With the grit and determination that we're seeing by this independent team from Middle America, I think that these guys are going to make it. Eli?
Bob Hartley right now, number 16. Eddie Hill and Tim Gibson yet to qualify for Top Fuel. We'll have the Top Fuel dragster story as soon as we come back. Speed Vision is with you from the Texas Motorplex. Our coverage rolls on right after this. Speed Vision's coverage of NHRA Winston Drag Racing from the Texas Motorplex is being brought to you by Castrol GTX, the motor oil that provides maximum protection. Castrol GTX, drive hard. A beautiful day. The crowds are out in record numbers. A lot of families on hand, and we're glad you're with us here on Speed Vision. Let's get right to it. Top Fuel this year has been a major story. In the near lane, Larry Dixon. Bob Vandergrift, the far side. The man who turned the 4.486 in Houston races on to #1 qualifier here at the Texas Motorplex. That's the work that's ongoing in the pit area right now with 1 round of qualifying yet to go. Frank Hawley standing by alongside that dragster they call the True to Texas car. Frank?
Well, this is the car, Don Prudhomme's Top Fuel dragster, and its driver, Larry Dixon, is working on being #1 qualifier at 3 races in a row. 4:54 last night. Excellent run, but you went out this morning earlier in the session, smoked the tires. Now, were you guys trying to really go for it? We saw a lot of tire smoke earlier today.
No, we really weren't. I mean, we just went out there and we wanted to try and step up a little bit from the 454. We thought the track could take it, and for that run, it didn't. So this run here, we come back and try and do a first round setup, and if we can run somewhere between a mid to low 50, we'll be really thrilled.
So you're not after trying to improve that qualifying spot? You really want to set the car up for race day tomorrow?
Yeah, I mean, if you could get the #1 qualifier, that's great, but if you can be in the top 4 or 5 cars in qualifying, you got lane choice, and that'll be a good enough car to win on Sunday.
So that's the story from the Don Prudhomme pit area. Larry Dixon would like to be #1 qualifier, but he's really looking at winning the race tomorrow.
And remember, folks, already 4 races this year in Top Fuel. 6 different drivers have gone to the finals. There's nothing guaranteed. One guy who knows what being in the finals in Top Fuel is all about, though, is Tony Schumacher. But as in any motorsports operation, you need to have the good driver and the talent behind him.
Dan Olson's the crew chief on the world's fastest top fuel dragster, the Exide car driven by Tony Schumacher. But he's certainly no Johnny-come-lately. Before that, he spent a couple of years with Eddie Hill. And earlier in his career, he was actually one of the guys responsible for the great performances of the legendary Larry Minor cars, both top fuel and funny car. Tony Schumacher, you put this car over 330. You got to be thrilled to have a guy like Dan Olson calling the shots.
Absolutely. We're very pleased with Dan. We knew that, coming into the season. When we hired him at the end of last season, we knew he'd done a great job for Eddie Hill. Not only was he a great crew chief, but he brought with him a fantastic team, and that's really the backbone. Me running 330, I get to look good, I get to be in the Exide car, and I get to do all the fun stuff, but these guys make it happen. The clutch guys, the motor guys, these are the guys that make the horsepower and hook it to the ground. Now we're here sitting in Dallas. We know it's a great racetrack. We know we can put a lot of clutch and put a lot of horsepower down in the middle of the track because it's a concrete racetrack all the way down to 1320, and we're going to go out here and try to break our own record. That's fine.
These guys have been top speed at 3 of the 4 events. They've been to the finals. They've done everything but win a race. Maybe here this weekend.
All right, 5 final visits this year, and they have come up feathers thus far. Another great story here today is in funny car, where qualifying numbers have been up and down from yesterday's heat and humidity to what we have today. The king of the burnouts, Dean Scusa, goes from failing to qualify to right now number 2 behind only Ron Capps. Let's hear from him.
Well, I tell you, Ron Swearingen is the man that made that happen, and that was the fastest ride of the kid's life. He's off getting the circulation back in his knuckle somewhere after 315 miles an hour, 491. Wow.
Yeah, we're pretty happy. That's our personal speed best. We've run as quick as 486. And what we've done here is we've been having some trouble. We've been trying to catch up with force and do some testing, and we finally just took all of our test stuff off, went back to our normal combination, and it seemed to come right back to us.
Being that aggressive, you risk smoking the tires and being outside like John Force is.
Yeah, we were a little afraid of that, but we went with the numbers, and it seemed to be okay. We're going to try and calm that down a little bit, and maybe we've got an 80 in here.
Calm Dean down while you're at it. Eli?
All right, Steve, thanks. There you see the top fuel qualifying to the moment. Doug Herbert, the winner at Houston. He's in at number 6 behind Dixon and Selzy, who have set the pace. The next group, taking you all the way back towards Alan Hartley, includes Bob Vandergriff, who prior to his round 3 efforts had not even qualified for the Castrol Nationals. 2 names you might be looking for? Well, Eddie Hill, there he is, along with Tim Gibson. One more chance to try and earn their way into tomorrow's field of 16. When we come back, we'll head to that pit area. They're getting the Ron Capps funny cars set to go racing. We'll update you as soon as we come back. Today's coverage of NHRA Winston Drag Racing from the Texas Motorplex is being brought to you by Motel 6. Motel 6 has over 55,000 rooms renovated nationwide. Call 1-800-4-MOTEL-6 for reservations. Welcome back to Speed Vision's coverage from the Texas Motorplex. Glad you're tuned in. I'm Eli Gold on this beautiful day. You talk about funny car. Obviously, this year you talk about John Force. But this weekend, you're talking about the Copenhagen funny car in the near lane, Ron Capps. After 3 first-round losses and 1 DNQ at Houston, Roland Leong and the guys have tuned him to the #1 effort of the weekend. 491 at 306.95 miles an hour. Frank Hawley, impressive run.
Well, it was a great run, and when you go out and you qualify #1, you can take a few minutes to relax. And I'm sitting here with the driver, Ron Capps, and crew chief Roland Leon. Ron, how do you feel going into this last session, and what are you guys going to do? Try and improve, or just set up race day setup?
Well, we're going to try to improve. Basically, we're very happy. Obviously, coming off of Houston, we didn't qualify. To come here and just be in the show and be qualified is a major deal for us. But hey, hats off to Roland. He's done a great job. Him and Dale Armstrong are working very close together. Roland helped him a lot last year, and to see those 2 working together, it's going to only produce results like this.
Well, Roland Leon, you've been #1 qualifier many, many times over your career. I know it's got to feel good, but what's going on? How do you go out and have kind of a tough season that you've had so far and then come back with a #1 qualifying spot?
Well, yeah, we've been struggling pretty hard, Frank, with this Copenhagen Camaro. But then again, we've been testing a lot and had some very good results testing. Then get to the track and the conditions change. And we just don't have enough runs as a baseline to say, well, let's do this and come up with low ET. We know the numbers are in the car, but then again, joining it is another story. And like they say, low ET will cure cancer, and that's how we feel right now.
Well, these guys seem pretty confident down here. Eli?
First winners here a year ago, knocking off John Force when he had that Elvis car, you might remember. Then there's the name Scotty Cannon. How many of you know Scotty? Let me see a show of hands. Well, maybe not a whole lot because he hasn't qualified for many events this year, but he's one cool guy, and so is our own Steve Evans.
If you're looking for cool, just stop by the pit area of funny car racer Scotty Cannon. Scotty's from Lyman, South Carolina. Not only is he cool, the car is pretty cool itself. He calls it the Nitro Mater. It's a Pontiac body, and it's got all kinds of neat graphics on it all the way around the car, and the fans are flocking to it. What is not cool, however, is that Scotty's having a problem becoming an NHRA funny car racer, and it's tough to not win when you're used to winning in Pro Mountain IHRA. You dominated there.
Well, naturally, it's hard to take something from someone when they're used to having it and back them up a little. Yeah, we was used to winning. You know, there's a lot of races over there. There's a few we didn't qualify different years, so we understand. It's pretty cool. I mean, but, you know, we're just working at it.
What are you doing to get back into the fields?
Well, we've hired Dale Poldy, and he's an ex-funny car racer and tuner, and he's got a lot of good things to bring to the sport, and we're hoping he can turn it around. I mean, crew chiefs play a big crucial role in how good these things run, believe it or not.
Last year, Ron Capps in the Don Prudhomme Copenhagen Camaro won twice as many races as John Force, just not the championship. Well, that was going to come in 1999. What happened in Houston?
Well, we're trying to take that step to basically run with John Force. We knew in the offseason he was going to run 470s and 480s at will, and it's exactly what he's doing. And we made changes with a 5-disc clutch. We got a little work going between Ron Leon and Dale Armstrong now, and so it's exciting. We know it's going to happen. The car's going to run very good when it does run good, but that and some cylinder heads that we put on this car, it's making gobs of horsepower, and it's wanting to lift the front end at half track, and I think we cured that. And if we can just get the thing to stay down the front end, we'll be just fine.
We wish you well.
And as we mentioned, Ron Capps qualified number 1. Scotty Cannon in the field right now in the Oakley car, qualifying at number 12. You know, I've wrestled with how to smoothly lead into this next interview. How about in this corner from Waterford, New Jersey, weighing far less than I do, Bob Fry.
One of the hottest new funny cars and most popular cars on the tour this year is the one driven by Jerry Tolliver. Now it's sponsored by the WWF, and right now features Stone Cold Steve Austin on the front, the hottest wrestler in the world. Now this car is the real deal, and they got to be pretty pleased with the performance. They've already been to a semifinal, been in the 4-second range, and Jerry's run over 300 miles an hour. Jerry, this car's done just about everything you'd want it to do.
We're very happy with the performance of the car. Been running consistently in the 4s over 300 miles an hour, and we're on a path here that we're very happy with.
I think just get this car in the winner's circle, because believe me, this is the real deal. Now, as far as that wrestling stuff's concerned, I think it's all fake.
It's fake, really. I'm telling you, those wrestling guys aren't nearly as tough as they think they are. And if they just bring their Rudy Poo bodies down here, Bob Fry take care of them, because that's the bottom line.
Welcome back, everybody. We are with you here at the Castrol Nationals, presented by O'Reilly Auto Parts. We are at the Texas Motorplex, technically in Ennis, Texas, where the fans have come by the thousands to join us today and to watch John Force. It is on his shoulders that most everybody says this sport will move into the next millennium. Well, who is John Force? Those are just some of the accomplishments that John has managed to put together over his great, illustrious career. He is a product of talent, of cubic dollars, and you know the old saying, money buys speed. How fast can you afford to go? Well, earlier this weekend, Steve Evans spent some time with the John Force team.
No team in all of drag racing works any harder than John Force's bunch. And look at the facilities they have at their disposal. There's 2 race car trailers in here, both 18-wheelers, and in the middle of this mammoth pit area sits this. It's called the Technology Center. In fact, let's go in and see if we can find John, Austin Coyle, and the gang. What do you see this deal? This is strictly for the crew chiefs. They each have their own computer station. They have monitors that show the cars and what the crews are doing outside. They have Austin Coyle over there, and we got John Force right here. You're going after 4 races in a row. Not even you have done that in a while.
Well, we really just try to motivate on, keep ourselves motivated on winning and getting a good hot rod out there.
You won 3 races last year. You're going to win a lot more this year. At least that's your plan.
Well, years ago we had won 13 or 14 in a season. We just had a good hot rod, and we're on our game. Austin Coyle working with Bernie and John Medlin, 2-car team. Good budget behind it. You can't beat that.
Speaking of Austin Coyle, boy, you want for nothing in this operation. Anything you need, you get.
Well, that's right. And John's put together an operation here to where we pretty much have the budget to do whatever we think is needed. And, you know, we're trying to learn to use it to the best way we can.
It's working. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
I'm about as far removed from the John Force pit area both financially and geographically as you're going to get. I'm in the pit area of Chuck Beal. Now, let me tell you the differences between these two. John Force's Technology Center's parked way up there. We're down here in the North 40 with Chuck Beal. While there is Austin Coyle working on the car of John Force, Chuck Beal's got Doug Toyo. Another difference, John Force has 8 Winston championships. Chuck Beal's got, well, great hopes here this weekend. But there's one real glaring difference between these two teams here this weekend. Chuck Beal is qualified. John Force isn't. And it's going to be very interesting to watch this guy who's been racing everything, including junior fuel cars and top gas cars since back in 1967, try to make this field here this weekend, even if it means the 8-time Winston champ John Force has to sit and watch Chuck Beal race on Sunday. Eli?
The difference right now, 5/100ths of a second to see Force earn his way in and unseat Chuck Beal. There you see the funny car numbers to this moment. Corey Lee, limited financing. He's right there, middle of the field at number 8. And there's Chuck Beal, of whom we spoke moments ago, trying to earn his spot and make it stick. John Force isn't in. Mr. Magoo's car, Don Sasenka not in. Peanut, Dale Creasy Jr., he's not in the field yet either. Nor is Eddie Hill in the top fuel entry. Frank Hawley, how panicked is the work in their pit right now?
Well, if you want a strange story, how about this? 11 years ago, this man right here, Eddie Hill, was the fastest top fuel dragster driver on the planet, right here at the Texas Motorplex, with the world's first 4-second run. And Eddie, 11 years later, man, you haven't even run in the 4s this weekend. What's going on?
Well, we've had a lot of breakage stuff. It's hard to check, and a computer was broken in the same spot, so we didn't find it for a while. So we're chasing gremlins, not to tune up so much, but we're just having parts problems. I hope we got them solved for now. We got one shot left to get in the program. I hope we can make it.
Well, I'll tell you, it's a tough field. The track's really strange out there. It produces some incredible performances or tire smoke. This morning, the session was about 50-50. What's going on?
Well, it's just a little hard to read. Dallas is not quite as good on the starting line as some of the other tracks, but it's so good down track that it'll fool you. You know, you can't do everything in the world on the start line, but after that, you can do pretty much what you want to. So sometimes you get too confused.
Well, one guy that hopes he's not too confused in the next qualifying session is Eddie Hill. Eli?
A lot of you folks might remember Eddie ran here in that first fuel race against Dan Pastorini back in 1986. Then there's the story of Randy Parks, who's been racing since the 70s. This, though, is only his second year in Top Fuel. He and Bob Fry kind of turned the Top Fuel world upside down for us, Bob.
This is the view Randy Parks had of the world when he experienced a top fuel blowover out in Phoenix. He then took the fluke top fuel car down to Gainesville, ran a career best, and still didn't make the field. And Randy just barely got in down there at Houston. You wouldn't mind putting these first couple of races far behind you.
Yeah, it's been tough out there. Top fuel's gone to another level. We ran 470 at 310 miles an hour in Gainesville, and that was 17th. I couldn't believe that didn't get us in. That would have got us in every field in last year. So we had to change to the 5-disc clutch, try to step this program up. Our first run on the car was a 472, 305. That qualified us at Houston. Hey, you know, things are going in the right direction.
But I've got to ask you did that top fuel blowover, still no wheelie bar in this car. Why not?
Well, this is the car I drove in 1998. This is our backup car. It's a Brad Hadman chassis, and this has a different engine location than the McKinney car. The engine's further out. There's more weight on the front end. This car doesn't have a tendency of carrying the front end. On the other hand, with the McKinney car, that car always wanted to carry the front end, but we didn't want to add the weight of the wheelie bar, so we tried it once without the wheelie bar. Boy, was that a mistake. We got that car back. We're putting it together for Atlanta. When it comes out again, you can bet it's going to have a wheelie bar on it.
Just for the record, this is the car that Gary Scelzi drove to the Winston Championship in '97.
All right, guys, thank you. There's Eddie Hill's machine, the Pennzoil car, waiting to qualify. When we come back, we'll roll out those 500 cubic inch power plants and a couple of carburetors, Pro Stock, when we come back on Speed Vision. Speed Vision's coverage of NHRA Winston Drag Racing from the Texas Motorplex is being brought to you by Advance Auto Parts. The best part is our people. Welcome back, Eli Gold, Frank Hawley, Bob Fry, Steve Evans, the entire Speed Vision crew here at Billy Meyer's beautiful Texas Motorplex. You know, you talk about Pro Stock. What were the chances for me to tell you that Warren Johnson is the #1 qualifier? Well, pretty darn good. What about if I told you after one day of qualifying he hadn't broken the 7-second mark? Well, you wouldn't have believed that. That was the case until today, when the professor went 6.904, 200.22 miles an hour, still #1, but back where we would expect to see him, Frank Hawley, with some pretty spectacular numbers.
They are spectacular. You know, when I started racing the alcohol funny car a few years ago, a 6-second, 200-mile-an-hour run was considered pretty darn good. And now you got guys doing it with carburetors on gasoline in a full-body car, and one of the people that is best in the world at that is Warren Johnson. Warren, you've made 200 a lot of times, but the difference in conditions from yesterday to today, big step up for everybody, including yourself.
Well, these cars, there's two factors that really dictate how your performance is going to be, and that's the atmospheric conditions and track conditions. And those two factors dictate what you're going to do with the car as far as setup, gearing, clutch, and so forth. And it was a lot better this morning than the two sessions we had on Friday, and that's what really accounted for the performance increase.
You know, a lot of the fuel guys are having trouble out there. They'll either go out and set a record or smoke the tires. Is it a really good track for you right now?
Well, this is a decent track for us, and the fuel cars, they have the ability to overpower basically any racetrack out there with the superchargers and nitromethane, so they can really get themselves in trouble in a hurry, where we don't have the luxury of excess horsepower. We have to maximize what we have and use it as efficiently as possible, and if you do a good job, you run decent.
A lot of finesse to get a pro stock car over 200 miles an hour, and Warren Johnson, as I said, on the top and one of the best. Eli?
He is indeed just that, and there you see who is chasing him right now. Make a note of the guy qualified at #5, Alan Johnson. We'll get back to him in just a second. Jim Yates in the split-fire car. The next group of 8, having already qualified, includes Troy Coughlin. Remember, his brother Jeg has not yet made the field. And down in #16 spot, there's Darrell Alderman, one of the Dodge boys. Of course, a host of fellas have yet to qualify, including that list you see right there in the upper left of the screen. All right, we said Darrell Alderman is a Dodge boy. So is Scott Jeffreyon. But how about the other Dodge Avenger, qualified in 5th? Alan Johnson. Let's learn about him.
There are 4 factory-backed Dodge Avengers in pro stock and 1 independent. That would be Alan Johnson. 2 races ago in Gainesville, Florida, there was almost no independent. Alan Johnson survived this incredible crash, maybe the most vicious of the decade in pro stock. The engine was okay, though, even though the car was destroyed. Alan got a backup car from last year from Dale Ike, one Scott Jeffreyon drove. Still has, well, a little souvenir from that crash. But other than that, you're feeling pretty good and doing something the factory cars can't do. You qualify, they don't.
Well, yeah, I'm feeling pretty good. We've been pretty fortunate to pick up Dale Ike to help Dad in the engine compartment, and we're doing very well with that. We've qualified every race this year but one, and very happy.
Does the factory guys ever come over and say, good job, Alan?
Yeah, we see the guys some, but, you know, their program's over there, and they're working very hard at it, so we just have to do the best we can do with what we got.
You're getting a lot of fans, I can tell you that.
Thank you.
That's one thing about the motorsports fans. They appreciate hard work. Then there's the story of a couple of the biggest names in pro stock racing here this weekend, trying to rekindle the success of years gone by. Bruce Allen and Larry Morgan. Bob Fry has their story.
There are 2 drivers in pro stock that have combined to win over 20 national events, but none lately. One of them is Bruce Allen, the driver of the Rear and Morrison Outlaw machine. And Bruce, you've experienced all the mental anguish of competing in this class lately. What keeps you guys going?
I guess everybody's support, the people at Pennzoil and Outlaw brand that think that we can come back and be a force, and our own fortitude and determination to keep going and know that there's a lot of ups and downs. There's no guarantees in life, and this is just a little chunk of it. And you have to prove that how bad you want it. You have to show some perseverance and stick with it.
It's got to get a bit frustrating sometime.
Well, that goes without saying. I mean, when you're competitive and you have to be wanting to do this, it beats you up. My friend Mike Edwards has told me before that he just lots of times can't sleep. I mean, it's just literally, it just tears you apart because you want to do good so bad. And you know that, like in our case, we've got all the ingredients. We've got awesome sponsors, a good shop, a lot of good people, a lot of talent, and we just need to stick with it and turn things around.
The other driver in that category is Larry Morgan. And Larry, I got to ask you, what keeps you coming back?
I'm not sure. I think we're crazy. Now, we're not going to let these little guys beat up on us old guys. I'm getting to be an old guy now. I guess we just love to do it. We love the torture, I guess. Has to be the torture.
Must be a whole field full of masochists trying to run in pro stock. But keep your eye on Larry Morgan's new Dodge and Bruce Allen's Outlaw car. They'll be back at the top of the pack before too long.
Curious, Bruce Allen last won in 1992 at Saint Air International Drag Strip in Saint-Pierre, Quebec. Larry Morgan, his last win 5 years ago in Englishtown, New Jersey. Don't go away. Lots more coming up in a moment. We continue from the Texas Motorplex. Eli Gold and the rest of the Speed Vision crew on hand here at the Castrol Nationals. Just joining us, remember what these fans already know. John Force has yet to qualify in funny car. He's having a host of problems. Let's take you back a little earlier. There's the Castrol machine in qualifying against his co-owned car of Tony Pedregon. Hide the women and kids. It just wasn't good looking. Anyway, you cut it. Force at a 51, 262.46. He has yet to qualify. And there's the ongoing work in the pits, Steve Evans.
And you can see the expressions on their faces. They are ready. Game day faces. John Force has not been able to qualify for 14 years. You come in here on a 3-race win streak. How did you paint yourself into this corner?
Well, we don't know. We've just been trying some things, and we're off. Tony's doing fine. We'll fix it.
What can you do? You've got to take a lot of clutch out of it, try to get it safely. You don't care if you're 16th or number 1.
Oh, if we got a hot rod here that tries to run 70s, and the track just wasn't there, and then we tried to pull it back. It dropped cylinders and gave us more trouble. But we'll find a mid-range here somewhere. If not, and I never say we're not going to qualify, but we're definitely going to push one of these cars, Tony or ourselves, to the win here.
Good luck.
Thank you.
John Force's whole life has been about overcoming adversity. This is just another chapter. Frank Holly?
I'll tell you, the tires, if you spin them hard enough, fast enough down the track, they can actually blister. As you can see on this big Goodyear drag slick. Well, somebody that blistered the racetrack earlier today is Gary Scelzi at 322 miles per hour. But your performance this year, you got to say, has been really sporadic. What in the world's going on?
Well, we went to the new 5-disc clutch at the beginning of the year. Testing showed a lot of promise, and all of a sudden it didn't work, and it didn't work several times. We had other problems that we were chasing, and when we realized what the problem was, we didn't qualify in Houston. We stayed and tested Monday, went 59, 57, and 53, and it looks like we've carried that performance over here to Dallas.
So you've got it figured out now, or are you not confident enough to say that?
Frank, I don't know if you ever figured out, but we're feeling good. We've made 3 consistent runs in a row. We're number 2 right now with a 53, or 54, I'm sorry. We think we're close.
Well, they're real close to winning this race, maybe. Eli?
But they've got to deal with Larry Dixon and a host of others, as you can see the tension beginning to mount. You know, NHRA Winston Drag Racing is a family affair in the grandstands and on the racetrack. The Pedregons, the Johnsons, and this family as well, making a name for themselves.
Pro Stock is arguably the most competitive class in all of NHRA drag racing. Let me tell you about the Coughlin family. Brother Jag went to the finals at the first race of the season out in Pomona, California. He got the win. Who'd he beat out there? His brother Troy. The next race out in the desert in Phoenix, Troy went to the championship round. So that was 2 races, 2 finals for the Jags team. But then a little bit of reality set in down at Houston in our last race on the tour. That's where Troy failed to qualify. Jaggy went out in round number 1. Dick Maskin, you're the engine builder for this team. Why do we have problems with consistency in the Pro Stock class?
Well, in our case, I think maybe our engines are a little bit ahead of our chassis right now. Troy had a new car over there, and he had a couple of bad brakes and didn't get in. Jaggy's car just didn't run the ETs it needed to in qualifying to get on the good side of the ladder, and we changed it around a little bit and ran pretty good first round. Could have run a lot better. So we're looking for that consistency and getting on bad racetracks where we're headed, and we're really looking for it.
You told me you weren't disappointed with that. You kind of expected a little glitch in the road at Houston.
Well, yeah, I don't think this is a real smooth lake all the time. We go to a lot of different racetracks. We're constantly changing things. Everybody in this class is so aggressive, and if you don't stay on top of it, well, you can't win anything.
It'll be very interesting to watch and see how the Jags team can do here this weekend at Dallas, especially after coming off that DNQ and first-round loss at Houston a week ago.
They're intent on getting it squared away. As for John Force, hasn't failed to qualify in 212 consecutive events. He's yet to qualify today, but right now he's working the ropes. He wants to take care of you guys, the fans. Speed Vision's coverage of NHRA Winston Drag Racing from the Texas Motorplex is being brought to you by Mopar. Parts for Chrysler, Plymouth, Dodge, and Jeep vehicles from the dealerships that sell and install them. That's the Mopar difference. Welcome back, everybody. That is Warren Johnson. That is V. Gaines. Gaines trying to earn his way into the field here for tomorrow. WJ already the top qualifier. Frank Hawley's alongside. I'm Eli Gold. What does Warren Johnson hope to do on this run?
Well, you know, they're running the Pro Stocks later in the day now. If he has a chance to improve on that #1 qualifying position, the conditions are probably ideal right now, except to make one of those Pro Stocks run any faster than his 200-mile-an-hour qualifying run is going to be pretty difficult, even for WJ.
For Warren Johnson, V. Gaines not going to be quick enough to make it into the field. The numbers right there, impressive, and he's right. As this day has gone, the speed numbers have gone up, the ETs have gone down. Now, that man, Jag Coughlin, has not yet qualified. And Steve Evans, you talk about that Jag's operation. They've had an up and down kind of season.
And it started with an up, winning the first race of the year, and slowly their performance has just ebbed away as they slide into an abyss. He was a first-round loser 2 weeks ago, and he's not just not in the field, he's the slowest of all 36 cars entered here.
You know, it's certainly not a power problem because Dick Maskin is his crew chief. He was crew chief for Jim Yates when he won the Pro Stock World Championship a couple years. What this car's been doing is leaving the starting line, shaking the tires violently, and he has to get off the accelerator and just abort the run. So they've got plenty of horsepower. It's a matter of working with the suspension, the tires, and the clutch in order to get that horsepower to the ground. This car could qualify in this run. They've got everything they need if it's adjusted just exactly right.
That is a look at Jag Coughlin racing against Kurt Johnson, who's solidly in the field already. A good drag race, but he's not going to do it. The disappointment is etched on the faces. That is an 0-2 at 197.93 miles an hour. Jag Coughlin failing to qualify, and you can kind of see right there he's not tickled. So that's how it's going to shake down. Take a look at some of those numbers and some of the storylines. Alan Johnson in at number 7. He's the other Mopar guy we talked about earlier in the show. Look around. You don't see Alderman. You don't see Jeffrey on. You're not going to see Larry Morgan or Bruce Allen. We talked of them earlier. Bob Fry visited with them. They, too, failing to qualify for tomorrow's race.
Warren Johnson out of the Pontiac with the #1 on it. And again, you're the #1 qualifier. Another ho-hum, 690, 200.
Well, as long as it's 690 is enough to keep #1, that's all that matters. But we're just trying to improve on it. If we can keep going in the right direction, that's the key to this whole deal.
Okay. Warren Johnson has been top speed and low ET at every race this year.
And again, they'll be chasing him here come tomorrow. And, Frank, some pretty interesting matchups.
Well, yeah, you know, the Pro Stock racing over the last few years has been just incredible. Very, very close racing. We've got 16 drivers tomorrow that are going to be within just a little over 1/10 of a second in qualifying times.
Johnson and Coughlin tomorrow. Anderson is running against Edwards, who was the runner-up in Houston. All that coming up tomorrow. Hope you can stick around. There's more yet to come today. Great crowd here today on a beautiful afternoon outside of Dallas, Texas. We roll on the Castrol Nationals. Favorite son of all these Texans is Eddie Hill. He has yet to qualify. There's his wife, Ursi, always there supporting his efforts to the hilt. And we'd love to see, as this crowd would, Eddie get in the field, not yet qualified.
Well, a former champion. He won the NHRA World Top Fuel Dragster Championship in 1993. And he's 63 years old. But I'll tell you, he's one of the finest drivers out there. He's just having a really tough weekend getting that machine to get down this quarter mile.
Corey McClenathan in the MBNA entry, solidly in the field already. That's the matchup here, but Corey Mack's content for tomorrow. Eddie Hill, as you say, at 63, made his debut back in 1958, when I was a mere 5 years old, I might add. He is trying to earn his way into tomorrow's field of 16. Steve Evans, it'd be a popular run if he could pull it off.
He's really going to have to step it up, though, Eli. His best effort so far has been a really awful 5.38 seconds. He's got to run better than 480. If they don't qualify, they will take this very, very hard. They can't just shrug it off, Eddie and Ursi.
Bob? It's interesting because Eddie started out the season on such a high. He was #2 qualifier at Pomona and looked like finally he was going to put together a championship challenge like he did back in 1993, but just hasn't materialized. It also hasn't been a great start to the year for Corey Mack. They've really struggled with Mike Green figures. The MBNA car now is back on his pace.
And with 22 career wins, 12 over the last couple of years, Corey Mack never loses confidence. Not going to work for Eddie Hill. You saw the blower belt go flying off. His weekend is done. Tough break. Got out of the box okay, but it didn't last more than about 300 feet.
Yeah, it took off fine. You saw some raw fuel come out of the cylinders. Obviously a problem with the engine. And then, as you said, the blower drive belt that pushes all that air into the engine just gave up and the engine stopped.
Jim Head and Randy Parks next up here to try and set themselves the starting spot for tomorrow's event. Top fuelers have had a mixed bag of success here. Some of these guys have had a good time getting a hold of this all-concrete racetrack. And the thing you got to remember, though, that starting pad is really no different than anywhere else. They're all concrete at that part of the track.
Yeah, exactly. What they're doing is they're getting out a couple hundred feet, and they have these multiple stage clutches that actually act like infinite gear ratio changes. And as they apply that additional clutch to that engine, what it does is if too much, it could just spin the tires. Now, Randy Parks is a guy that came out of the alcohol dragster ranks and has moved up to top fuel over the last couple of years and has been mixing it up with the big boys. He's had some limited success, but has yet to get right down there and win one of these races.
10 years in Super Comp. You know, his daddy's in the International Tennis Hall of Fame. If you remember Olin Parks, that's his daddy. And that's Jim Head. Heads up in smoke. Randy Parks, career best numbers, 464 at 318 miles an hour.
Now, they're the kind of numbers he needs to mix it up with the big guys tomorrow. 460, 318 miles an hour, got a lot of power down there. They're going to be able to compete tomorrow.
Oh, Randy Parks is in. Moments ago, Larry Dixon and Gary Scelzi battled head-to-head. Not much of a race. Looks as though Dixon's going to hang on to the #1 spot. Taking a look at numbers 9 through 16. There's where Parks checks in. Grubnick in the field. Alan Hartley apparently going to dodge the bullet here today in at number 16 spot right now, and a tough break for Eddie Hill. He and Tim Gibson will not qualify. Steve Evans now down at the far end with Larry Dixon.
Larry Dixon, there's a pretty good chance you're going to start on the pole for the second race in a row. That's good.
Yeah, it's been great. You know, we've had good qualifying runs, but we need to continue that performance on Sunday, and that's what we're concentrating on this weekend at Dallas.
And all of the crew chiefs will be checking the weather conditions tomorrow morning, and that can mean so much to how these cars run.
Oh, it'd make all the difference in the world. You could see, I mean, it'd make the difference between running 460 low AT to running a 448. So we'll see when we wake up in the morning.
Congratulations.
That's been a big story all weekend. Was supposed to have been a washout here today. The rains never came. Look at those matchups in the first round tomorrow. Tony Schumacher, Kenny Bernstein, Dunn, and Connie Coletta. I can't wait for tomorrow.
Well, I'll tell you, that's what they're going to have to work on is that setup, because if the weather's conditions change tomorrow, the crew chiefs are going to have to change a lot of stuff on those cars in order to get them to perform.
Vander Griff and Corey Mack in the opening round coming up tomorrow. But hey, folks, don't go away, because coming up here in just a few moments, the answer to the big question of can John Force make his way into the field? Frank Hawley, you've been in this funny car situation, working with that man, Austin Coyle, the crew chief for John Force. What's going through these guys' minds right now? What did they do in the pits?
Well, I'll tell you what they have to do, and I think Austin would tell you, because I spent 5 years of my life driving for this guy, is that you can't get too far away from what you really know how to do. You get kind of afraid of these cars, you back off on the power, and you think if it's not working, you could slow it down just a little bit, but sometimes when you try and slow it down a little bit, it slows down way too much. That's the problem Austin and John are having today. So I think they're going to have to step back up and try and go out there and put some power power down to that racetrack.
You're looking out towards the pits, the manufacturer's midway, but John Force and the crew concentrating on only one thing, keeping that remarkable streak alive. They haven't failed to qualify in years. They don't want to miss the Castrol Nationals driving the Castrol GTX car. Their qualifying run as soon as we come back to the Texas Motorplex here on Speed Vision. Don't go away. May the force be with you. Next. Today's coverage of NHRA Winston Drag Racing from the Texas Motorplex is being brought to you by Castrol GTX, the motor oil that provides maximum protection. Castrol GTX, drive hard. Welcome back. You're just in time for funny car qualifying. If you're just tuning in, remember, John Force has not yet qualified. His crew chief, Austin Coyle, is with Bob Fry.
Austin, you look kind of cool on the outside. Are you even the least bit nervous?
Well, sure I am. You know, these cars aren't as predictable as you wish.
Racetrack looks pretty good now. We're seeing a bunch of low 490s. What kind of run are you going to try to make? You going for it or just trying to whip your way in?
Well, we tried to wimp our way in, and that didn't work, so we went back to something a little closer to what we're used to this year, and if the fuel god smiled on us, we'll be okay.
Their biggest problem right now might be that if the gods smile on the track with rain.
Never know. The clouds have been looking a little ominous overhead. With Bazemore in the near lane, far side, you've got Ron Capps in that machine right there. Frank Hawley, what a strange season it has been for that team right there. Crew chief Roland Leong in the bunch. After failing to qualify at Houston, they're trying to hang on to the top spot here this weekend.
Well, you know, I spoke with them earlier, and, you know, they want to do that, but what they really want to do is prepare for the race tomorrow. I talked with both Ron and Roland, and they said they want to put their race day set up on their car now, see what it does in the afternoon, and prepare for tomorrow.
Remember Bazemore in the near lane, quick qualifier at Gainesville. Let's watch. Bob Fry talked about those low 90s. There they are again, the side-by-side 91s.
That's the kind of exciting drag racing we're going to get to see tomorrow. And one of the good things about that is it shows you how equal the lanes are. 91s on both sides of that racetrack.
All concrete from start to finish as opposed to the transition we see at most other locales. Got to be a whole lot easier to get a hold of.
Well, I'll tell you, there's always tricky spots on every racetrack, no matter whether it's concrete or concrete and asphalt.
Now, here's the story. Can he make the race? Oh, yes, this man's already in. Tony Pedregon, teammate and co-owned by John Force. He's set to go. But John Force trying to make sure he is in. Frank, can he do it or not?
Well, I'll tell you, the interview with Austin Coyle is correct because the pressure now is on Austin Coyle to make that car go out and perform. See, if it's in a race situation and the setup's not perfect, John Force can do a few things to maybe win a round of competition, but not good enough to qualify for that race. It's up to Austin Coyle.
Steve Evans, you've seen enough of these. Can Force get in?
You know, one time Austin Coyle actually did limp Force into a field. It was years ago, and he said that was a total act of cowardice. I'll never do it again. He's going to smoke the tires or qualify in the top half of the field. Bob?
That's exactly what I was going to say. You will know 60 feet after this car leaves the starting line, guys, if he's going to make it or not. If he doesn't smoke the tires, this could be a pretty fat run. He could also smoke the tires real early. Tony Pedregon's going to have the best seat in the house, but see what John Force does right here.
Tony Pedregon at this point solidly in the field. The winner at Pomona earlier this year. But all the attention, with all due respect, is on John Force. Not a person sitting down right now, Steve. These folks really could be potentially in on some long-standing history.
The last time that John Force failed to qualify was in 1987. I mean, how many consecutive successful qualifying efforts has this guy made?
If I'm a betting man, I got to take the shot here on the green and white Castrol car. This baby's going to get into the racetrack. But like I said, if there'll be no suspense, you'll know early.
Is the quick qualifier at an 88, 315 miles an hour. Back to Bob Fry.
Austin, that certainly wasn't a whip run. Number one.
Well, that's what we were hoping for, really, because after all, we proved we didn't know how to soften it up. We tried that this morning, so we figured conditions are a little better, go back to what we know. Maybe we'll be a hero, maybe not, but we lucked out this time.
And I'll tell you, the guys are saying you'd be able to tell it right out of the box. Watch it here, Frank. You can tell it was a run in the making.
Well, Bob Fry was right. Austin had that car loaded up right off the starting line, 200 or 300 feet out. There was a little puff of smoke off the rear tires that almost lost traction, regained control, and then just kept powering all the way to the finish line.
So John Force not only in, but he is fast qualifier. Steve Evans is with him.
From zero to hero in 4.88 seconds, the Force will be with us tomorrow.
I tell you, Coyle, we sweated. I slept between rounds. He's pretty ballsy, but, you know, we got a car that tries to run 70s. You pull her back, she drops cylinders, and she won't play. And old Scusa put me out earlier, got my mind right. So we all got humbled real fast here. Made you really respect the sport and all these guys you race. She's still tough.
And the cheer from the grandstands, I could hear down here.
So John Force is in. Bob Gilbertson gets bumped out on that final run. Take a look at how your favorites did right there. Whit Bazemore in. He was quick earlier in the weekend. Settles for the number 5 qualifying spot. And on through the entire round of 16. There you see where everybody checks in. Scotty Cannon finally qualifying for Funny Car. He is in the field. Solid run. Now the matchups tomorrow, as you'll be seeing right here on Speed Vision. Force and Densham, Worsham and Lee, Scusa and Cannon with Bazemore. And Al Hoffman ought to be a pretty good battle right there. Other side of the ladder. Pick your favorites. That's how it all stacks up for opening round eliminations of Funny Car here at the Texas Motorplex. Well, it doesn't get any bigger than that. John Force had to produce, and as a champion, Frank, he did.
Well, Austin Coyle can do that, so can John Force, and tomorrow there's going to be a lot of guys shooting at them because those 90s are real close to Force's 88.
Hope you can join us tomorrow, 2:30 Eastern Time. We'll be with you here at the Texas Motorplex for our continuing coverage of the Castrol Nationals presented by O'Reilly Auto Parts.